Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. Congress narrowly averting a federal government shutdown, but faces another urgent deadline to raise or suspend the nation's borrowing limit or risk a default. 5 cases of Omicron detected in New York. This while the strain shows up in Hawaii and in Colorado. Actor Alec Baldwin says he isn't responsible for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer, which happened on the set of his Western movie Rust. And a Trump-era border plan will soon send asylum seekers back to Mexico, further straining already stretched shelters. The policy revival comes amid mounting humanitarian outcries. Minnesota, Colorado, and now New York. Governor Kathy Hochul announced 5 cases of the Omicron variant have been detected in her state. This brings the total number of confirmed Omicron cases in the U.S. to 8.
Governor Hochul made the announcement late Thursday. It came after cases were detected in Minnesota and Colorado. She wrote on Twitter that the 5 cases of Omicron are not cause for alarm and that they knew the variant was coming.
That individual has already recovered from their symptoms. They tested positive but are already feeling well, and it was a very minor case. And that's something I want to put an exclamation point on. While this may be highly transmissible, at least from the early evidence, and again, more information is still forthcoming, we want people to know that the early cases that have arisen are not life-threatening.
She called on constituents to get vaccines and boosters and mask up, though she said authorities don't know how vaccines and boosters are holding up against Omicron. Of those 5 cases, 1 was a man who attended a convention in Manhattan in late November before returning home to Minnesota, and another in New York City's Long Island suburbs who had recently traveled to South Africa. State health officials confirmed an unvaccinated Hawaii resident recently contracted the Omicron strain. The person had not traveled recently. And an epidemiologist in the state said the adult contracted COVID a year ago. They aren't hospitalized and have mild to moderate symptoms.
The bottom line in terms of public prevention measures, they are essentially unchanged. So while the variant is something we will definitely want to watch and track, we still anticipate that vaccination is going to be one of the best ways to slow transmission.
She said the person lives on the island of Oahu. And Colorado's governor says the strain surfaced in his state as well.
It is somebody who just traveled to southern Africa and returned. She is experiencing mild symptoms and is isolating at home. She was vaccinated but had not been boosted.
And on Monday, new testing rules for international air travelers will take effect. Travelers must show a negative test 1 day before departing for the U.S. Right now, they have 3 days before their departure to show a negative result, though unvaccinated travelers must show a negative result within 1 day. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky's order says they must take quick action to stop the spread of the Omicron variant into the U.S.
And now the effort to track the COVID virus is intensifying. A highly specialized lab in North Carolina is at the forefront of detecting the ever-changing virus. Let's take a look inside.
This is the front line in the hunt for Omicron in the U.S. After you finish that often uncomfortable COVID test,
you're doing great. Perfect. Next nostril.
It's usually shipped to a place like Mako Medical Laboratories, just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina.
10,000 square feet, just COVID processing.
Mako sequences samples taken in more than 40 states.
30,000 per day is how many we're processing right now, so that's about 100,000 or so per week.
Labs like this are key in detecting the Omicron variant in the United States because of what they do after identifying a positive test.
As of right now, we are at the point where we're sequencing every positive that we get.
Genomic sequencing, complicated and expensive testing that reveals the precise genetic lineage of the virus, is the only way to identify new COVID-19 variants. Mako is one of just over 60 labs that does sequencing for the CDC's National Strain Surveillance Network.
I would say it takes between 2 to 3 days to actually fully get the sequence from confirming a sample as positive to library prepping the DNA and then to actually sequencing that library.
The World Health Organization and the CDC declared Omicron a variant of concern after it was flagged by scientists in South Africa. A mutation in the Omicron variant causes a peculiar test result called an S gene dropout.
N gene is the blue curve, and then the green curve is the S gene.
And it would normally be up there with them?
Yeah. Typically, they're all grouped pretty closely together.
Making a suspicious case easy to spot for expedited sequencing.
We have about 6 samples right now that have that signature S gene dropout.
But sequencing is required to confirm Omicron because it isn't the only variant with that type of marker. Scientists at Mako say they've seen many different variants throughout the pandemic. Some, like Delta, become the dominant strain, while others fade quickly or never take off. Right now, there's no way to know what type of impact Omicron could have on the U.S. But they agree that when it comes to cracking COVID, knowledge is power.
Google says it's postponing its return to office plan indefinitely amid growing concerns over the Omicron variant. The new policy overturns an August mandate requiring employees to turn up in the office a few days a week, starting January 10th. Company executives now say the plan would be moved beyond that date. The move also comes amid resistance to Google's company-mandated vaccinations. CNBC reported last week that hundreds of employees protested the company's vaccination mandate for those working on government contracts. Google says nearly 40% of U.S. employees have come into office in recent weeks, with higher percentages in other parts of the world. Google is one of the first companies that asked its employees to work from home during the pandemic. It has about 85 offices across nearly 60 countries. The National Football League announces the suspension of Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Antonio Brown and 2 other players for violating its COVID-19 protocols. A review with the NFL Players Association and the league found that Brown, safety Mike Edwards, and former wide receiver John Franklin misrepresented their vaccination status. Brown and Edwards have each been suspended without pay for the next 3 games. Franklin is a free agent and is not eligible to play in the next 3 games if signed by a team. Brown's lawyer says he is vaccinated, but chose to accept the NFL's decision in order to get the case wrapped up quickly. He says Brown will use the time away to treat his ankle injury. The NFL's review came after the Tampa Bay Times reported on text messages that appeared to show Brown trying to acquire a fake vaccination card. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers issued a statement saying the team didn't find any fake vaccination cards from its players. Congress has averted a government shutdown last night. Both chambers passed a stopgap bill to extend funding through mid-February. NTD's Jessica Beatty has the details.
There will be no government shutdown.
After a showdown between lawmakers, a bipartisan agreement's been made, and a government shutdown has been averted.
This agreement will give appropriators in both parties and in both chambers time to reach a comprehensive agreement on appropriations by February the 18th of next year.
The House and Senate passed a bill within hours of each other to keep funding up through mid-February, generally at current spending levels, while adding $7 billion to aid Afghan refugees. Earlier in the day, some Senate Republicans demanded a separate vote to defund the Biden administration's federal vaccine mandate.
No precedent exists in American history for punishing private employers who don't enforce government vaccination edicts.
The mandate forces companies with 100 or more workers to make sure their employees get the COVID-19 vaccine or get tested weekly and wear a face mask. Republicans argue it's federal overreach.
It's not government's job, it's not within government's authority to tell people that they must be vaccinated, and if they don't get vaccinated, they'll get fired. It's wrong. It's immoral.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer allowed the vote, but it failed.
I am glad that in the end, cooler heads prevailed. The government will stay open.
A shutdown would have cost the U.S. economy $1.8 billion for each week the government's closed. That's according to estimates by S&P Global Ratings. It now goes to President Biden, who's expected to sign it. Congress now has more time to work out a longer-term funding plan for the full fiscal year. Meanwhile, Congress faces another urgent deadline. The government's approaching its nearly $29 trillion borrowing limit, which could be reached by mid-December. Failure to extend or lift the limit could trigger a default. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
America's economic recovery is slowing a bit. The Labor Department says employers added 210,000 jobs to the economy in November. That's well below analysts' expectations. It's also the smallest number of jobs added since December 2020. Some economists expect hiring to slow down this month because of concerns over Omicron. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate fell to 4.2%, a new pandemic-era low. But overall, the economy is still down nearly 4 million jobs from pre-pandemic levels. The Federal Reserve says many parts of the country were hit by supply chain disruptions and labor shortages in November. And the Fed's 12 regional banks reported on economic growth. In a survey of business conditions around the country, the Fed's 12 regional banks found that the economy continued to grow at a modest to moderate pace. The outlook for future growth remains positive. But some of the Fed's business contacts are uncertain, saying they don't know when supply chain bottlenecks and labor shortages might begin to ease. Pandemic-induced supply chain blockages have created unprecedented shortages in a wide range of products. Earlier this week, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that the word transitory would no longer be used to describe the country's rising rate of inflation. A former house manager at Jeffrey Epstein's Florida estate says he recalls driving a woman who testified against Ghislaine Maxwell. Juan Alessi's testimony comes on the fourth day of Maxwell's sex abuse trial in Manhattan federal court. Alessi worked full-time for Epstein from 1991 to 2002. He says he remembers seeing the woman known in court by the pseudonym Jane at the Florida house. He says she appeared to be 14 or 15 years old. Alessi said he would drive Jane alone to the home where she spent time with Maxwell and Epstein. Prosecutors say Maxwell recruited and groomed underage girls like Jane for Epstein to abuse between 1994 and 2004, and that she participated in some of the sexual encounters. Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to 8 counts of sex trafficking and other charges. Maxwell's lawyers say the memories of Jane and 3 other accusers expected to testify have become corrupted over time. They also say that they have financial incentives to implicate Maxwell. Alec Baldwin on Thursday denied responsibility for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of his Western movie Rust in an emotional television interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed, and director Joel Souza was wounded when the gun fired a live bullet. Baldwin said he did not pull the trigger on the gun he was holding during the rehearsal.
So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun goes off.
Baldwin had been told the gun was safe by crew members in charge of checking weapons. Baldwin has been widely criticized for not checking the gun thoroughly himself, but he insisted in the interview that was not the actor's job.
I feel that there is, I feel that someone is responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me. I mean, honest to God, if I felt that I was responsible, I might have killed myself if I thought I was responsible.
A lawyer for head of lighting for the film, Serge Fetnoy, argued that the interview reflected poorly on Baldwin.
Just about everything was wrong with that Baldwin interview. He may not be listening to the people that give him advice, but I'll walk him through that step by step in deposition. He takes no responsibility at all. He feels no guilt. He says he's not the victim, but he sounded like it the whole time.
2 crew members have filed civil lawsuits accusing Baldwin, the producers, and others of negligence and lax safety protocols on the set. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The U.S. Justice Department is investigating the sexual harassment claims made against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. A document made available by the state of New York on Thursday details a contract. The document was approved by state officials earlier in the week for legal services. The current governor's office is responding to multiple state and federal investigations into the Cuomo administration. Thursday's record notes that Cuomo also faces other inquiries, including his handling of CCP virus-related deaths in nursing homes. The department had decided against opening a civil rights investigation into that issue last summer. Questions also exist over whether Cuomo used state resources to write a book chronicling his leadership during the height of the pandemic. The DOJ did not immediately respond to requests for comment, while Cuomo could not be reached for one. The office of the current governor, Kathy Hochul, did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Thursday. Now we turn to the landmark abortion case in the Supreme Court, where the state of Mississippi is challenging Roe v. Wade. There are signals the court is set to accept the Mississippi law banning abortions after 15 weeks in most cases. The ruling, which is expected in June, could either keep or strike down Roe v. Wade or limit it. Earlier, I spoke with Aaron Solomon, who is the chief legal analyst for Esquire Digital, to learn more about the arguments on both sides.
I would say that the most compelling argument that I heard yesterday in oral arguments was that Mississippi law still leaves months to obtain abortion for what they consider to be robust exceptions. And I would also say that Stewart's argument that the lower courts may have misinterpreted or overextended Roe and Casey in this case is something that the Supreme Court is going to look at.
And when we talk about stare decisis, where precedent makes the rule of the land, do you think that this is going to be what determines the outcome?
Well, I think one of the greatest things that I heard from the justices yesterday was what Justice Breyer said in the beginning. And what he said is the notion of stare decisis should be used to overturn Roe only if Roe is a case that is not an exceptional case, only if it's an ordinary case. Clearly, Roe and Casey are both extraordinary cases, and any court should be far more unwilling to overrule a case like that and to stay with stare decisis absent a compelling reason not to, which the court may find here in Dobbs.
The Mississippi law bans abortions after 15 weeks. Now, Justices Roberts and Alito are questioning why 15 weeks is not enough time. What's the argument in the pro-choice camp in response to this?
Well, I mean, it's a really good question. So we've known for about 30 years that the generally medically agreed upon time that a fetus becomes viable is, let's call it 24 weeks. There's debate between 24 and 25 weeks. These 15-week abortion laws are known as heartbeat laws. In Mississippi, actually, HB 1510 was known as the Gestational Age Act. There was some commenting and questioning back and forth yesterday about issues like when a fetus can experience pain. But again, that hasn't been the law of the land. The law of the land basically looks at 24 weeks as being the point of viability. So it's not just Mississippi. It's 19 other jurisdictions as well that have either in the books as good law or are considering similar heartbeat legislation, which is part of the reason why Dobbs, the case yesterday, is so important, because Mississippi is representative of many other states who are looking at passing 15-week legislation. Personally, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen here. I think the court is going to say, we're not yet prepared to overturn Roe and Casey, but what we are going to do is take a chunk out of Roe by saying that the Mississippi law itself is not entirely unconstitutional. And of course, along with that, it's not just going to be an opinion of the court. There's going to be concurring opinions, and I think we're going to see some very strong dissents as well.
Nevada authorities are now able to identify the victim of a 41-year-old cold case. Using DNA testing and genetic genealogy, they were able to identify a previously unknown murder victim as Tammy Terrell. 17-year-old Terrell was last seen alive at a restaurant in Roswell, New Mexico on September 28, 1980. Her body was found a week later and near Henderson, Nevada, which until now had been known only as Jane Arroyo Grande Doe. Now that Tammy Terrell has been positively identified, cold case detectives say they can take the next step, finding her killer. An Idaho state trooper assisting a driver with a flat tire jumped just in time to avoid a charging vehicle on a busy interstate road. The trooper, in a bright yellow vest, standing near the stranded motorist. As he turns to look behind him, a white pickup truck smashes directly into the parked car just after the trooper jumped the concrete barrier to avoid being hit. The driver, who was sitting on the ground, quickly hopped onto the concrete road divider to avoid the truck. The Idaho State Patrol says the impact caused a chain reaction, resulting in a 6-car collision on the highway. Authorities say the trooper was taken to hospital with minor injuries and was later released. The motorist did not need medical care. Migrants seeking to enter the United States will once again have to stay in Mexico. This comes after the country accepted Biden's revival of a Trump-era policy. Mexican shelters are now under pressure, facing the upcoming migrant influx. Calls from human rights groups are also gaining momentum.
The Biden administration said Thursday Mexico has agreed to reinstate a Trump-era border plan. The Migrant Protection Protocols, also known as the Remain in Mexico program, requires asylum seekers to remain in Mexico and await U.S. immigration hearings. In northern Mexico, the upcoming influx of returnees is putting a strain on already stretched shelters.
I believe that right now, we will not be able to attend to more migrants in the shelter. Perhaps others will. Most of the shelters on the Tijuana border are at 90% capacity.
Local officials also expressed funding concerns for absorbing more illegal immigrants. Although President Biden had tried to strike down this program, federal courts in Texas and Missouri ruled it would resume. The revised policy will address humanitarian concerns shared by both the U.S. and Mexico's government. That includes COVID-19 vaccinations, more protection in border cities, and quicker resolution of asylum cases. But human rights advocates insist the plan poses serious risks to those slated for return to their countries.
We know this will cause harm, both physical and potentially psychological, on the people on the move, as well as challenges when it comes to their access to due process in immigration courts.
A recent report by Human Rights First compiled over 7,000 kidnappings and attacks against them. They were either blocked or expelled to Mexico under Title 42 since Biden took office. The program may take effect as early as Monday. Returns will begin at one border crossing and eventually expand to a total of 7.
Coming up, expect to pay more and have fewer choices this year while shopping for a Christmas tree. Extreme weather conditions in the Pacific Northwest, on top of supply chain issues, are disrupting the supply of Christmas trees. Artificial intelligence is taking a radio DJ and multiplying him. That DJ you hear might be a robot. More on that in just a minute here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for all of your support. At MyPillow, we not only have pillows, but we have hundreds of products, including my new slippers, bathrobes, sleepwear, and my new beds. We're offering the best gifts ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have this exclusive offer on the standard size MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. We also have the queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now only $24.98 with your promo code. And we have the king size, regularly $89.98, now only $29.98 with your promo code. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive this exclusive offer.
This week marked a milestone in aviation history, one that also offers hope for a greener future. A United Airlines flight made it from Chicago to Washington, D.C., using fuel made from a mixture of corn and sugar-based food scraps. Let's take a look at how United made one man's trash another man's jet fuel.
Our first ever 100% sustainable aviation fuel flight.
From the moment you step on board, it is clear this is not your regular flight. The passengers are executives and politicians. Flown by test pilots, this plane is labeled experimental, since the fuel on board is not traditional jet fuel. This is what's called sustainable aviation fuel, processed from sugar and corn. It is powering this United Airlines 737 in one of its 2 engines, a first for a flight carrying passengers.
This is an important and historic moment for global aviation.
United CEO Scott Kirby says this test could one day combat climate change. The Biden administration's goal is no aviation carbon emissions by 2050, an industry that contributes about 3% globally. Sustainable aviation fuel cuts emissions by up to 80%, but it is up to 8 times more expensive than regular fuel, and right now in limited supply. But it is a start, with electric airplanes too far in the future.
There's simply no battery technology, even theoretical technology, that has enough energy density that you could put enough batteries on the airplane to get an airplane this big with this many people flying this far. And so, what works in a lot of other transportation industries won't work for aviation.
This test touched down in Washington with a message. Airlines want tax credits to lower the cost, and the FAA to approve the fuel more widely. Manufacturer Virent says this fuel is so molecularly similar to jet fuel, it is a direct replacement.
This year's Christmas tree supply is taking a hit from supply chain disruptions and extreme weather conditions. Those in the market for a tree may pay up to 30% more for both real and artificial trees this Christmas season. Here are the details.
Even Christmas trees aren't immune to inflation or the shortages brought on by the pandemic. Industry officials say American shoppers should expect to have fewer choices and pay more ahead of the holidays.
The heat wave, then you had the fires, you have drought, and everything combined is just really, taking a hit on the Christmas tree industry. Trucking is up double, sometimes more than that. So you're going to find across the board, the trees are just going up, 25%, probably at a minimum anywhere you go.
Record-breaking heat and wildfires in June took a heavy toll on Christmas tree farms in Oregon and Washington state. These are 2 of the nation's largest growers. Christmas trees take up to 10 years to grow, so the crop loss will be felt for many seasons to come.
Growers have been hard hit by floods, fires, smoke, drought, extreme weather conditions. High heat has fried many of the crops in the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest, and that will impact the trees that get to market.
On top of that, a shortage of truck drivers is making it harder and more expensive to transport live trees from farms to stores and tree lots. But the artificial tree industry is also struggling with its own supply troubles. Clogged ports and the lack of truckers delay shipments and raise costs.
We have to bring our products over from our factories, and that has been very challenging. You might have heard about the situation at the ports or the lack of truckers. All of that has impacted us, which means that we have fewer trees to sell as an industry.
Artificial Christmas tree at Balsam Hill are about 20% more expensive this year, and there's less variety.
Andy Chanley has been a radio DJ for over 32 years. Now, thanks to artificial intelligence technology, his voice will live on in many places at the same time.
34th Lakeshore.
Is your radio DJ actually a robot?
Right now, who can correctly identify
Well,
songs
it could be, thanks to artificial intelligence.
There's something interesting going on here. WSHF, New York. I'm keeping it blazing for you all night long on KBRL, where I'm Andy.
This is human DJ Andy Chanley.
Sunny skies, highs around 60 degrees. Tonight, looking cloudy with a chance of some...
He's the afternoon drive host at Southern California's Public Radio 88.5 KCSN and has been a radio DJ for over 32 years.
All right, let's see. We got a message here for some Billy Joel. Marianne.
Now, thanks to artificial intelligence technology, his voice will live on simultaneously in many places.
Hi, I'm Andy. Welcome to the first ever example of an artificial intelligence DJ.
Seattle-based AI startup Well Said Labs has used his voice to create a robot DJ. They're using AI technology to create over 50 real human voice avatars like Andy. The end result makes it difficult to distinguish between the two.
Synapses. Here's Click Track Heart with their new song The Upset on Super Hi-Fi.
I did hours of me saying basically radio-like things and in the most conversational voice possible, trying not to sound like an uptight DJ, but sound like a conversational DJ, and just read forecasts and front sell songs that are coming up, and do that for hours and hours, and then I hand those files off to Wellsaid, and they did their magic with them. Highs around 60 degrees. Tonight, looking cloudy with a chance of some rain showers. But
once the voice avatars are created, Wellsaid manages the commercial agreements according to the voice owner's requests.
Hi, I'm Andy. Welcome to the first ever example of an artificial intelligence DJ.
Zach Zalon is the CEO of the LA-based AI startup Super Hi-Fi. He says Andy will be built into its AI platform that automates music production.
The chance for some rain showers.
I'll just type in, "Hi, I'm Andy. This is a test of my AI voice." And just by clicking create, the AI will actually generate that voice. What you're about to listen to is not Andy the DJ, it's actually Andy the AI voice playing in real time from what I just typed in.
Hi, I'm Andy. This is a test of my AI voice.
It's literally that fast to create, almost instantaneous.
Hi, I'm Andy. This is a test of my AI voice.
There's no human that can make 100 billion voice tracks available. It just doesn't exist. And what this is going to allow the best voice talent to do is to scale their own voice to a level that they've never been able to do before. It's really an opportunity for them to expand themselves into the living rooms of literally hundreds of millions of consumers that they've never had access to before. We see this net as an incredible positive for voice talent out in the landscape.
The next step will be for the AI to automate the text that's created by humans. That could raise concerns of deep fakes as AI perfects its mimicking of people in real time.
The next time you're running late for a Zoom meeting, a new feature may start drawing attention to the absence. The video conference software is introducing a tool called Attendance Status to make it easier for the meeting host to see who has and hasn't joined the meeting. For those folks who sign on late, their names go under a new Not Joined section right in the participants panel for everyone to see. You might be thinking, I'll just say I didn't get the invite. No such luck. Along with your name in that Not Joined section is your calendar response, meaning it's just like showing up late to an in-person meeting. The tool is still a work in progress, but users might want to think twice about being tardy. In Washington, D.C. on Thursday, members of Congress introduced a bill to teach young people about communism. They're concerned the lack of education about communism has led America's youth to support an ideology that Congress members call inherently evil. NTD's Melina Weisskopf brings us more from Capitol Hill.
A group of Congress members expressing why they say the specter of communism is a bigger threat now than ever before and how to overcome this threat. One Congress member says it's every single person's responsibility to take action.
It is now our responsibility. Nobody else, every single one of you, it's in your hands.
The Congress members are introducing a bill called the Crucial Communism Teaching Act, an effort to teach America's young people the legacy of communism.
The Soviet Union is gone, but that legacy has lived on. Started with the radicalism of Marxist-infused radicalism in the 60s, up until the CRT radicalism of today. It's all from the same vein.
The threat of communism, the evil of communism, the inherent evil of communism.
An ideology that's led to countless deaths and ongoing persecutions against people of faith. The Chinese communist regime today still jailing, torturing, and killing Falun Dafa practitioners and Uyghurs.
My sister has been detained since September 2018. More than 3 years now, 3 years, 3 months. I have no idea where she is. The conscience of the world, conscience of the humanity is at test, and we will be failing it. So we must act.
The lead sponsor of this bill, Congresswoman Maria Salazar, comes from a family who fled communist Cuba. She tells us the young generation put Fidel Castro in power because they didn't understand the true nature of communism.
Very concerned that future generations, my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, will say the same thing to us. You didn't teach us how bad this was, and unfortunately, socialism and communism is very pernicious. Once it's in, it's like a pit bull. It grabs you and is not going to let you go. It's an attack on the human fiber. It's an attack on humanity. It's evil. It's very evil, and being so evil, it only destroys the human soul and everything with it.
And Congressman Jacob says Americans are more vulnerable to this threat now, as principles of faith and family are under attack.
Our faith has been rocked. People believing in God and going in church is weakened right now. Our family structures in a lot of places are weakened.
A 2020 poll reveals that 1 in 5 millennials views communism favorably. And there are even more, 1 in 3 from Generation Z, who buy into the ideology.
Socialism is very appealing to young people. It's very utopian. It's this wonderful idea that we can all have what we want and it will just work, except it never works because it goes directly against human nature. It is a subversive effort. It started with the Soviets. The Soviets have been doing it for decades.
And if this bill does pass through Congress, it will lead to a model curriculum being written and offered to schools that will teach the younger generation about the dangers of the communist ideology. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Just ahead, this Christmas tree in London is an annual gift from Norway, but it doesn't seem to be very well received this year. Some are criticizing it for being bare and asymmetrical. And 30 wild white rhinos have arrived in their new home after a 2,000-mile journey. The translocation effort comes as the species faces habitat loss and illegal poaching. All that and more in just a moment.
The worst genocide in human history also destroyed the lives of thousands of Jewish survivors still suffering today.
God calls on people who believe in him to act on his word. Comfort my people.
Especially during this holiday season of Hanukkah.
When I come here and I sit with Lily, I realize what she needs right now is food.
These elderly Jews are weak and they're sick. They're living on $2 a day. This now is how God's children are living. Take this time to send a survival food box to these forgotten Jews.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews urgently need your gift of $25 now to help provide one survival food box with all of the essentials they critically need for their diet for 1 month. Your special holiday gift will provide everything they need to celebrate the miracle of Hanukkah.
This is the first time in over 70 years that she has anything to do with faith.
The communists came and wiped it out.
Your grandparents?
And now we're coming to her and we're saying, it's okay to have faith. It's okay to light the Hanukkah candles.
For just $25, you can help supply the essential foods they desperately need for 1 month.
For over 35 years, this trusted ministry has given Christians like me a way to tangibly bless Jewish people who are in need throughout the world.
God tells us to take care of them, to feed the hungry. And I pray Holocaust survivors will be given the basic needs that they so desperately pray for to survive.
The CEO of Pfizer says COVID shots could become an annual event and that he wants them for children too. But global health experts question the UK's booster campaign and whether it will provide any protection for healthy individuals. Oxfam and other charities say the profit Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies are making from the pandemic is immoral. And a news website reports that the chair of Reuters, an organization that provides news to billions, is also a Pfizer board member. NTD's Joy Felix brings us this report.
The boss of the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer says annual COVID vaccines are likely to be needed. Dr. Albert Bourla told the BBC this could boost population immunity and that his company is already working on a new jab for the new Omicron variant. Bourla also said immunising 5 to 11-year-olds would also be a very good idea. Meanwhile, international health charities say the profit the pharmaceutical companies are making from the pandemic is immoral. Last month, Oxfam said that Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna are making a combined profit of nearly £50,000 every minute, or £70 million per day. But Baller told the BBC the bottom line is millions of lives were saved and was unapologetic about making a profit. It comes after news that the UK government will offer all adults a booster shot by the end of January. But global health leaders are questioning the UK's booster campaign. Dr. Mike Ryan from the World Health Organization says the real risk of severe disease, hospitalization and death is with vulnerable, not healthy individuals.
There is no evidence that I'm aware of that would suggest that boosting the entire population is going to necessarily provide any greater protection for otherwise healthy individuals against hospitalization or death.
The National Pulse reported this week that the chairman of Reuters news agency is a Pfizer board member and top investor. The website says this raises serious conflict of interest concerns, since Reuters regularly reports on Pfizer products. Reuters provides news to billions of people. Joy Felix, NTD News.
After 16 years in power, Angela Merkel is bowing out of politics. The German military on Thursday sent off the outgoing chancellor with their highest ceremony for a civilian. The military band also performed 3 pieces of music she chose. Let's take a look.
Es ist diese Fröhlichkeit im Herzen, die ich uns allen und im übertragenen Sinne unserem Land auch für die Zukunft wünsche. Ich danke Ihnen von Herzen.
Topping the playlist was a hymn named Holy God, We Praise Thy Name, a nod to Merkel's Protestant upbringing. The second was a song from the 1960s by the name Red Roses Are to Rain for Me. It may reflect Merkel's youthful ambition. The third was a rock hit, You Forgot the Color Film, first played by a famous East German punk artist in the 1970s. This song was considered a veiled criticism of communist East Germany, where Merkel lived until the age of 36. Social Democrat Olaf Scholz is scheduled to take over Merkel's chancellorship next week. Every year, Norway sends a Christmas tree to London, thanking Britain for its support during World War II. But this year's Christmas tree gift seems to be disappointing some London residents. Let's take a look.
The Christmas tree on London's Trafalgar Square is Norway's annual gift to the UK, but some residents are feeling underwhelmed.
It looks like it's slightly leaning to one side, just slightly. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
And I just feel it's not full enough. It looks a bit sparse.
Footage and photographs show the tree has some broken branches. One side appears to have less growth than the other, though it was unclear when the damage was done.
Looks like last year's tree. A little bit miserable, I'd say. It's a little bit miserable.
The tree drew feedback on Twitter. Some users called it threadbare or half dead, but not everyone agreed.
It's beautiful, but it'd be nice to see it at night time. It's a lovely tree. It's a lovely tree. It's all that counts.
Criticism of the tree drew a diplomatic response from Norway. The mayor of Oslo said, "This is a love tree and it means a lot to us to give it to Londoners." Though it started as a thank you to the British people for their help during World War II, it is now as much about friendship, solidarity, hope for the future, and peace. She added that the tree symbolizes this, and she hopes that when the lights are turned on, the symbolic message behind the gift is what people have in mind. The Lord Mayor of Westminster also said in a statement that he knows once it is lit, the tree will, as ever, play its role in making Westminster an even more beautiful place to visit at Christmas.
A group of volunteers is trying to save hundreds of water buffaloes that police say were abandoned on a Brazilian dairy farm. As many as 500 have already died of hunger. Environmental police in a town some 150 miles from capital Sao Paulo responded to reports of malnourished and mistreated animals on a farm last month. Officers found 667 animals abandoned in a confined area. Many carcasses were found too. The farm's owner denied wrongdoing on local TV. The owner said there was food and water, and some animals died of natural causes. Authorities levied a fine of more than $360,000 on the owner. Civil police are also investigating. A number of nonprofit group Brazilian Vegetarian Society says the animals had little food to eat after the owner leased part of the farm to grow and sell crops. Rwanda has welcomed a herd of 30 southern white rhinos. It's the largest ever single translocation of the animals, who were taken on a journey from a game reserve in South Africa to a national park in Rwanda. Let's take a look.
It's the largest ever single translocation effort in history. 30 wild southern white rhinos were flown over 2,100 miles from a game reserve in South Africa to a national park in Rwanda. The team behind the project hopes to establish a new breeding population in the national park.
But we're very pleased with the outcome. We have 30 healthy rhinos in the pens currently, and the hope is that they'll settle easily and that they'll start breeding in the next year or two. We should see some offspring from them.
The International Union for Conservation of Nature classifies the species as near threatened. White rhinos in the wild face habitat loss and illegal poaching of their horns. A team of well-armed rangers and vets will keep the animals safe from poaching and disease in their new home.
The numbers are not positively growing across the continent, and they are being persecuted. There's approximately 10,000 left in the world. For Rwanda specifically, it highlights how progressive Rwanda is on the conservation scene, but also it will really support the tourism industry, which is great, but also bringing that value, the conservation value.
Rwanda hopes the translocation will boost the country's wildlife economy through tourism. This is the first herd of southern white rhinos reintroduced to the national park, though a number of black rhinos have been released there in recent years.
By adding these species that were not seen here before, we are making this park, we're diversifying the experiences that can be seen here, that can be lived here, and we're making them more enjoyable. And we're also contributing to conservation further in this national park.
The translocated rhinos have had their horns sawn off to make them less desirable to poachers. An international ban on rhino horn has been in place since 1977.
If you are haunted by fatigue, it's time to take a closer look at how you sleep, eat, and drink. Let's get some tips from Gina Marie, who brings us Strong Mind and Body.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. Everyone has experienced what it's like to get tired now and then, but fatigue works a little differently. Fatigue is characterized as having a sense of extreme exhaustion. This can be caused by either physical or psychological strain or certain illnesses. You can think of fatigue as being tired on steroids. This can be due to such things as eating too much processed foods, overworking yourself, not getting enough sleep, having bad relationships, and becoming ill. Fatigue can follow us like a dark cloud. It also drains our energy reserves. Consider following these guidelines to boost your overall energy levels. Start by easing up. In these busy, modern times, it's no wonder that overworking can cause tiredness and fatigue. Consider paring back your scheduled list of daily and weekly activities. Instead, set your priorities according to your most pressing tasks being at the top of your list. Put the less important ones lower down or get rid of them altogether. Next up is Eat Better Energy. The glycemic index, or GI, is a rating that indicates how fast or slow foods cause increases in your blood sugar levels. Eating foods with a low glycemic index can help to mitigate the sugar high and crash scenario. This typically happens when you eat refined starches such as sugary cereals, pretzels, and refined flour-based products. Foods lower on the glycemic index include healthy oils such as flaxseed, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, and high fiber vegetables. Examples include kale, sweet potato, artichokes, plus don't forget to add nuts to your diet. Water yourself. I'm sure we've all seen the flashy commercials featuring the overpriced sports drinks. Don't buy them. The best form of hydration is good old-fashioned water. Drinking purified water improves your circulation. It also helps to flush all the toxins out of your body. It's also great for boosting your body's natural energy reserves while preventing fatigue. Shut it down. Although sleep is crucial to regenerating your energy reserves, it's typically undervalued. We are all guilty of staying up late to watch TV, dabbling online, and working long hours. The problem is these wasted hours could be spent on a restful night's sleep. According to a National Library of Medicine study, a lack of sleep can result in feeling irritable and fatigued. These are a few tips that can boost your energy at any age.
Astronomers tracking a giant comet say it's changing their perspective. A study from the University of Maryland on the comet Bernardinelli-Bernstein was published this week. Astronomers say this comet is the largest they've ever discovered, about 1,000 times bigger than a typical one. And according to the study, it's active despite being at a near-record distance from the sun. Comets are essentially giant cosmic snowballs, though they need the sun to heat their surface. But researchers say this giant version is already spewing dust and vapors, even though it's far away in the outer solar system. They believe this new information could help them figure out what the comet is made of. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.